Perfect. So the other thing I want to mention is, let's see, there we go. The other thing I want to mention is if you have any questions, we will have some time at the end. You're also welcome to stay on at the end and ask some questions. If they come up and you don't want to lose them, you're welcome to type them in the chat. Matthew's going to be monitoring that, but he won't reply until we've talked through everything as well. But you are welcome to put them in the chat there. So thank you all for being here so much. It's all of our programs. We really need volunteers, and the volunteers are the passionate people who help make them happen. So thank you for being interested and wanting to give back to your community. Let's see, is it going to let me do this? Okay, perfect. So we are going to whirlwind go through here real quick. We're going to talk about what the Northcoast Regional Land Trust is and what we do. So that might be new to some of you. It might be review for some of you as well. We'll also talk specifically about our ambassador property at Freshwater Reserve. And then we're going to talk about two specific volunteer programs we have. One of those is volunteer ambassadors, and Matthew's going to talk about that. And the other is field trip guides for our education programs, and that's what I'll be talking about. We'll talk about the expectations we have for volunteers and any benefits that might be why you should volunteer other than just giving back to your community. And then some contact information and next steps as well. So a quick introduction for ourselves. My name is Nadia Van Lin. I'm the Education Outreach and Development Manager at the Northcoast Regional Land Trust, and I will let Matthew introduce himself.
Thanks, Nadia. Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Morisuti. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the Northcoast Regional Land Trust. I take care of organizing all of your community events, and anything you see on social media probably came from my thumbs. I'm looking forward to getting to speak with you a little bit more about our programs here, and yeah, let's move forward.
Perfect. Matthew, were you going to cover this slide?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So bulk of what we do at the Northcoast Regional Land Trust actually wraps up in land conservation. So on the left, you can see a map of all of our conservation easements. And what a conservation easement is a modification to somebody's deed that they voluntarily enter into through our work with the Land Trust. So people will do this in order to make sure that their land remains whole and not subdivided, and make sure that working lands stay as working lands and aren't developed and turned into housing developments or for other purposes. Another reason why somebody might put their land into conservation easement is if they wanted to bequeath their land to their children and wanted to make sure that through that inheritance that it doesn't get broken up into a bunch of smaller properties. The goal there is to kind of maintain the rural aspect of our region and also help support the working lands economies in our region as well.
Yeah. It's a really excellent tool for conservation too. It helps preserve a lot of wildlife corridors and specific habitat types for endangered species. So it's a pretty interesting way to do that on private lands. Cool.
So just a quick summary of the other programs that we do. We have stewardship workdays, special events. We also conduct biological monitoring at some of our fee properties, as well as an educational program. And we'll get into each of these a little bit more. So, but this is just a quick overview.
Yeah, just on so even we have the conservation easements as a bulk of our work, but also the outreach and education, which is what we need volunteers for.
Yeah, so the ambassador property that Nadia mentioned that many of you are already familiar with is Freshwater Reserve. This historically, at the beginning of the 20th century, was a working dairy farm, and remained as such for much of the last century. And today we continue to honor that legacy by continuing to have a working pasture out on the farm. You will see in the drier months of the year, from April through the late summer, you will see cows out on the pasture. And then we also host the North Coast chapter of the California Native Plant Society's nursery at this location. Yeah, can we go to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
before it was a dairy barn, this area was an important village site as well as a corridor for the Wiyot people who did much of their travel over water. And you can see here the star that is being pointed at, that is where Freshwater Farms Reserve is, um, kind of between Eureka and Arcata. And then the map also gives a broader view of the Wiyot ancestral territory. Freshwater Farms Reserve is also the site of a restored tidal wetland. Through the 2010s, this area had a tide gate removed at the mouth of Wood Creek, which allowed the tides to return to about 40 acres of the pasture. This was also part of a big collaborative restoration project where a network of slough channels and ponds were constructed in order to provide vital rearing habitat for salmon, trout, as well as habitat for the endangered tidewater goby. It's also the site of a lot of community functions like invasive vegetation management, planting and restoration, as well as interpretive tours. Like we've had insect tours, we've had fungus tours, we've had birding walks. It's also the site of the 3/4 mile nature trail that many of us enjoy, as well as the site of our annual summer celebration with Huckleberry Flint. So Freshwater Farms Reserve is where we're looking for ambassador volunteers. Freshwater Farms Reserve is a donor-funded, mostly volunteer-run, publicly accessible property that provides space for wildlife, for farming, and also for recreation. So as an ambassador volunteer, you would represent the land trust, you would connect with other volunteers and community members, you'd help maintain this space for everybody who gets to access it. So opportunities would include monitoring trail use and user experience. This could be walking the trail, getting to talk to people, answering questions about the trail, and also seeing what people want to see out there. Another one would be to promote and restore biodiversity at Freshwater Farms Reserve. This can be through working with us on planting projects or doing self-directed management of invasive plants. There are a bunch of invasive plants out there, so there's a lot of opportunity. And then another one is to help manage volunteers at the slew of volunteer events. We're going to be having trail maintenance volunteer events with the Humboldt Trail Council every third Sunday of the month, starting in April, going all the way through the end of October. So this would be a chance for you to get to work with other volunteers. You get to represent the land trust and also get more confidence with public speaking and volunteer management. You also get to network with local natural resource professionals. We work with a lot of professionals, either for biological monitoring opportunities of the Wood Creek enhancement project, and then also at different interpretive tours that we have are often led with local natural resource professionals. So if you're looking for a networking opportunity, this could be a really great opportunity for you. And more broadly, if you want to gain experience in the field of conservation or public speaking even, oftentimes you need to have experience with these types of things in order to get any type of job. If you're interested in a career in conservation, personally, I got started in this field by doing things like volunteer invasive pulling. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of test the waters in this field if that's something that you're interested in. So like I said, why would you want to be a Freshwater Farms Reserve ambassador? You would get to gain experience with all these different things that I mentioned. You get to learn about habitat restoration, vegetation management, and even agriculture. And you get to connect with your community, give back, help improve Freshwater Farms Reserve as a publicly accessible recreation space, nature reserve, and working farm. And you get to be part of an organization working to protect and restore wild and working lands in Northwestern California.
Awesome. Yeah, so then the other piece of some of our outreach and education programs is our educational program called Cows and Cattails. And it's a 3-day program. We have a pre-lesson and a post-lesson in their classroom. But the thing we need volunteers for is for the actual field trip, which is also to Freshwater Farms Reserve. The main point of the field trip is we try to ask the kids, can farms be part of a healthy environment? I think the answer is yes, but we let the kids figure that out with inquiry-based learning, and they get to spend a lot of time making scientific observations and talking about hypotheses. So there's a lot of key concepts we touch on during the field trip. There's 4 main stations actually that we do. We have a botany station where it's a little more introspective. The kids get to get down in the ground with the plants a little more, really practice those observation skills and talk about biodiversity. Hydrology is a lot of fun. They use dip nets and get to sample benthic macroinvertebrates, and they are an indicator species. So we get to talk about how we can predict the quality of the water at Wood Creek in the restored area based on the species that we're finding. We also do some soil science. We look at different soil samples from around the property, and they make hypotheses about which would be the best for growing food, because a big part of our mission as a land trust is, while we are conserving land, we're conserving it for its wild and working values, we do need food, right? So we need these working landscapes that are also viable for endangered species. And then the fisheries station is really fun. We talk about salmon habitat and salmon life cycle and play a really fun game that goes with it. So with all of the, let's see, there we go. So there's a lot of reasons to be a field trip guide. Personally, I'm a big fan of education. I just enjoy teaching outdoors. My background's in education. I've been working in schools for the past several years in our area as a teacher and in other capacities. But I love taking kids on field trips. It is it's always fun. Every single field trip, something new happens. It's a little different than classroom teaching. Maybe we find a frog or a family of otters in the creek. It's really interesting and cool. And I love seeing those aha moments with the kids. So you might be interested in spending time with the kids in our community and teaching them those aha moments and getting to experience the outdoors with them. You would also learn a lot about environmental education principles and methods, and get some foundational knowledge on wetlands conservation, scientific methods, sustainable land use. And you'd be able to provide feedback to our program too. I really value feedback. We're constantly trying to grow and improve this program, and being able to provide feedback is a great way to leave an impression on something for years to come. And just like with the ambassador program, you'd be part of an organization that works to protect and restore wild and working lands in Northwestern California, which I feel is a pretty good mission. And that's probably why you signed on tonight. So the other thing I will say, it's great experience. So if you are newer to the field of environmental education, or even just education as a whole, there's no experience like experience. I got my start in teaching, volunteering at an after-school program, and you really get those hands-on experience about leading kids and seeing some classroom management skills. But it is also, you're not being thrown in the thick of it all on your own. Teachers and parent chaperones are still present. I'm happy to work with volunteers, whether you want to lead one station or you want to lead all of them. We can figure that out together. We do have some expectations for these regular volunteer opportunities with the Land Trust. We really expect volunteers to be committed and reliable. If you sign up to lead a field trip or help with a stewardship event, it's really important that you show up and actually stick with your commitment. It's hard to restaff those things if you don't show up. The other thing we need, and committed and reliable, what also goes with that is that professional behavior and communication. I realize I'm going out of order, but you're representing the land trust. And so we do expect people to be professional, use age appropriate language if you're working with children, just generally be respectful of everyone. I think that's what we always expect, but of a regular volunteer especially. For the time commitment, because it does take some training for somebody who wants to be one of these volunteers, we do expect for a field trip guide that you would guide at least 3 field trips over the course of the season. The seasons are spring and fall during the school year. And yeah, if you guide 3 of those, each field trip is 3 hours. So that's about a 9-hour commitment, probably 10 if you include setup and cleanup time. We do have various field trips scheduled throughout this season already. This season, they are Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, generally 9 to 12. If you want to be an ambassador volunteer, we expect 12 hours per year of your time at Freshwater Farms. Some of that self-directed. If you'd rather help out with those events, that would also be really helpful as well. I did already talk about the professional behavior and communication. Again, you're representative of the land trust, so it's really important. And then attending a volunteer training or shadowing a field trip prior to guiding. So there is this kind of process to be able to fully commit to this, this volunteer opportunity. So next steps here would be emailing myself or Matthew about your availability for an interview. It's a fairly informal interview, but we do want to make sure that you are aware of the commitment that this takes, and you are passionate about it as well. We want to make sure it's a good fit for both of us. So after that interview, we would select, let you know if you were selected, and then we can schedule a training. We have a volunteer contract, and then we can get started on volunteering and having you really, it's a really deep way to give back to a program, and over time. That said, if you're feeling like a longer commitment is maybe not something that you're ready for right now, we do also need volunteers for mailing events, and those will go out for our donor lists, our newsletters we send out twice a year, the ways that we help keep our organization running. We also regularly have event volunteers for our summer celebration and annual celebration. Those only happen annual celebration is in the fall. And then we also have more volunteer events on our website. And I wanted to show you, if that is our website here, kind of where you could find them if you're looking for those like one-time volunteer opportunities. This is our website. It's ncrlt.org. If you come on here and go to news and events, events is where you would be able to find a lot of volunteer things like this interest meeting we're all at right now. Cesar Chavez Day is coming up on March 31st. We're at Martin Slough, so it's actually another one of our properties, not Freshwater Farms. But there's plenty of opportunities on here if you're looking for those more one-time things.
Nadia,
yeah.
I'm sorry, it doesn't appear that the website is showing up on your screen properly.
Oh no.
Yeah, so you might want to just make sure that it's on the correct screen.
You share. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, here we go. I'll go back to here. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so this is our website, the ncrlt.org, and you would go over to news and events, and down to events is where you'll be able to find all of the wonderful things happening with the land trust. Yeah, I think perfect. So that brings us here. Matthew, did you have anything to add?
No, you did great. Thank you, Nadia.
Yeah, all right. We can take some questions. The next steps, again, if you do want to be one of those committed volunteers, it's a really great way to make a difference in our region. And you would just email one of us, and we would love to talk to you more about it as we set up the training for it. I'm going to go ahead and stop let's see, stop the recording.